Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome in the News 10 Plus desk. I am here with Colton Cichoracki because you have quite the alert for people heading into this weekend and even next week especially.
Yeah, that's right. And we are tracking our first chance at seeing something meaningful around here in terms of wintry weather. And that's going to come Tuesday of next week. I was just looking at some of the latest model data. We get it a couple of times a day. So we just got the 12Z.
Oh.
That's the time that those models came in at. Looked at the three main models that we use for this long range, the GFS, the European computer model, and the Canadian model. And what's interesting about it is that the GFS stayed put in terms of what it was forecasting earlier. The Euro shifted west.
Okay.
And the Canadian shifted way east.
Oh.
So I'm mentioning all of this because we're going to be watching these trends in the models over the next few days because it is all going to come down to the track of the area of low pressure that's going to form and whether or not it goes west, whether or not it goes east, north, or
Stays
south.
right where it was predicted.
Right. So what ends up happening is a big question mark at this point because we're so far out. We're talking, Tuesday. So that's several days away. So we have a lot of time to watch this. Models will continue to bounce around. We'll see the shifts east. We'll see the shifts west. But eventually they'll come into agreement, hopefully. And that's when we'll have some higher confidence. And this all means something for us depending on the track. So let's break this down for you. What we know is going to happen, at least what the models are suggesting, we're going to see a big trough develop in the central part of the United States. That's going to allow an area of low pressure to form to our southwest near Oklahoma. And then eventually this low pressure is going to track to the northeast into the Great Lakes region. But depending on where it goes, does it go over here? Does it go over here? That all has big implications on what kind of weather we end up seeing. At this point, models are suggesting that this will be a strong system. We're talking about a low pressure system, possibly around 980 millibars. So a very strong low pressure system is forecast in the models. So that's what we do know. And as this low moves closer to us, it'll pick up a lot of moisture from the south, the Gulf of Mexico, and bring that up into our area, as well as having some cold air and some warm air that's also in place. So if the low ends up taking a track like this, and it goes through Illinois, and goes through Indiana, into near Ohio, that's a southern track. And what that would allow is for colder air to be in place over the Great Lakes region, and that would produce some snow for us, right? However, if the system takes a more northern track, so let's say it goes through Illinois, Indiana, and then actually cuts into Michigan. What that allows is that the low pressure system would then allow to pull up some warm air from the south. That would put us in the warmer air, and that would mean some rain for us.
Okay.
Right? So that's what we're trying to dictate right now and see what our models are saying, because all of the models have a low pressure. So that's pretty highly certain. But a lot of the models differ about where it's going to go. And obviously that has a big effect on us. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
And when it comes to computer models, the further out in time that you go, the less reliable they become. Because you got to think about it. You're forecasting today, like they are forecasting tomorrow on top of today. Then they're adding, so you're just adding all of these computations that are being done with the computer models. And the thing about computer models is if they are wrong today, with today's weather, they're going to be wrong tomorrow. They're going to be even more wrong 3 days from now. So that's why it's so hard when you get further and further out in time for our computer models to be exactly precise.
Yeah.
I would suggest that our models probably have, one of these models will be right with what they're forecasting, but we'll see what exactly happens. So that's why we can't definitively say what's going to happen exactly, but we do know that there will be a system, and what we do know is that we'll see some sort of impact from it.
Okay.
But depending on what track it takes is, what type of precip we see.
Right. Either way, though, expect precipitation coming in next week, whether that be rain or snow.
Right. And so I want to show you one of our models. This is the European computer model. And what this is doing, this is the latest track with it. Actually, no, it's not. So this is from last night. And so this is showing that rain snow line setting up right through Lansing and Jackson, right in between. It seems like it always sets up there, giving snow to the north and rain to the south. So that's why when we're talking about a shift of 30 miles, let's say, 30 miles to the north, that would put Lansing in all rain. Let's say it shifts 30 miles to the south. That keep Lansing in the snow and put Jackson in the snow. And that is not a very large distance when you think about it in the grand scheme of things. We're talking 30 miles. That has huge implications here, but it doesn't have big, that's small, right?
Yes.
So that's why it's so tricky. But why we are talking about this is because the computer models are consistently showing the system, and it does look like we'll see some impacts from it. So that's why we are giving you that first alert. We've been talking about this last several days, and we're going to continue to talk about it over the next few days. So this is kind of what we need to keep in mind here. We have several days of watching this. So the models are going to shift around east, west, north, south, strength. All of that will change over the next several days, and then eventually come into better consensus. But we are going to be watching that rain snow line, where that sets up. And then also, I will say that precipitation looks likely either way, and that this system, because of how strong it's going to be, will have some strong winds with it. Okay. So that's why it all matters, because if this ends up being snow and we get a lot of it and we have wind, then
you're blowing everywhere, limiting your visibility.
Right, and that's when we could have some issues, right? So that is all why this matters. And we're talking about it this far out. I would say if the models are still continuing to show something, tomorrow is the day that we'll probably start talking about some first alert weather days and things like that, really starting to enhance our coverage, because it becomes each model run, each day that goes by and it's still showing this, the more likely it becomes. So that's why we are going to continue to monitor it. I know we'll talk about this in a second, but great time to have the News 10 First Alert Weather app.
Yes, it is.
Because we'll be posting updates in there all day long. We'll post updates there through the weekend if you're wondering what's going on with this storm. And it's becoming less likely that this misses us, but it's still possible, right? So things can change in a very big way. And one thing I want to point out about apps is that apps use a single computer model.
Okay.
So I looked at one of the apps today, and it shows a snowfall number. But know that is just one computer model.
Okay.
And you will see that change depending on what the track of the system will be. So you might see a big change if it's showing, for example, 5 inches of snow, and then tomorrow it shows 2, then the next day it shows 3. It's going to bounce around too. So that's why we are not putting out any snowfall numbers. I'm not even going to suggest anything at this point. It's far too soon. But we are keeping an eye on this, and we will update you as we get closer to this upcoming system. Did I explain that well?
Yeah, you did. You explained it very well. And something that I want to add on to the First Alert Weather app is, we've mentioned it before, you don't only get your temperatures, your forecast on there, but you can also get traffic alert updates. So say you're driving somewhere, you're visiting someone who's in Jackson, you're from Lansing, and you're doing that on Tuesday. Like Colton said, as of now, some of those models are saying that Lansing will get more of that snow, Jackson more of that rain. So if you're traveling, the First Alert Weather app is also a great tool to have, just to keep aware of any of those changes if you are traveling in different locations.
Right. And so, and even if the system ends up bringing more snow for our friends in Metro Detroit, or let's say it goes west and it gives more snow to northern Michigan, this will continue to update you there, and you can see the radar, you can see the road conditions, all of that, no matter where you're at. So it's a very useful tool to have, especially this time of year when we're talking about different types of wintry weather. But let's talk about the weather before this. So I just want to start off by talking about that. But outside right now, look what's finally starting to happen.
Mr. Sun.
Yeah, we're finally starting to see some of that sunshine. It has taken most of the day, but we're finally starting to see it this afternoon, and I think we'll see a few peaks before the day is done. But temperatures have remained rather cold. We're in the upper 20s, so 27 in Lansing, 26 degrees in Jackson just after 2 o'clock. So we'll likely see highs in the upper 20s to around 30 degrees today. And the hour-by-hour forecast has been showing a little bit more sunshine than what we're seeing out there. But as we move into tonight, we'll actually see the clouds thicken back up. So we're not going to see as much sunshine tomorrow, and we'll likely see a mostly cloudy day on Friday. But I really don't expect any precip on Friday. But that will change as we head into the weekend. So before that main system comes in next week, we actually have another one that's going to come in on Saturday and into Sunday. This will bring us a few light snow showers this weekend. I don't expect it to be as significant as what we could see next week. However, we could see some light accumulation this weekend, so that's something to keep in mind if you do have any weekend plans. Temperatures will be in the 30s. Any of this accumulation will stay under an inch, but there could be some slippery travel conditions especially early Saturday and late Saturday and into early Sunday morning. So we'll be keeping an eye on this, but this doesn't look like it's a major system for us at all, but maybe some light accumulation will be possible. Now, as we move forward here in time, temperatures are going to be in the 30s through most of next week. So that Tuesday temperature of 36, that will likely change depending on how much snow, or depending on the track of that system, I should say. And then we do cool down a bit as we head towards the end of the week and into the following weekend as temperatures fall back into the 20s. So not a ton of cold air to be had around a region, but we'll be keeping an eye on that too. There are some signs that as we head later into January that some colder air may work its way in at some point. But, you know, it's remarkable, Taylor, if you remember back last month, we were talking about the fact that it looked like the second week of January that we would finally see some wintry weather. And shout out to the models because they've been locked in on that, and we are forecasting that storm on Tuesday. There's likely another system that comes in towards the end of the week that could bring us some more light snow. There's potentially another system that comes in the following weekend that could give us some wintry weather. So they're lined up, they're coming in. It's much more like winter.
Back to back too.
Potentially, yeah. So we'll see. It's very active as we head into the month of January, which, given El Nino years, typically the back end of winter is more active than the beginning. So late January into February is looking very active across the region.
Now, do you expect that? I know that the snow and some of that wintry weather has stretched or extended into the spring months like April, May. Do you think that this El Nino pattern this year will have anything of the same?
Well, it depends on,
route?
So what happens with El Ninos is that they actually kind of disappear really quickly.
Oh,
so
okay.
Once they start going away, they go away quick, and then
right.
we either go back to neutral or we get into a La Nina. So we'll see. Well, depending on when El Nino starts to wrap up here, which is expected to happen at some point this year, we'll see what ends up happening. It's always tough to tell how long winter lasts. If I remember correctly, the last El Nino, we had an early spring, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen again this year. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Sounds good. Well, one more time, we'll take a look at the 10-day temperature trend. Again, staying relatively in the mid-30s and then dropping off in the 20s.
Which, honestly, for this part of January, not too bad.
Oh, no. It's just the winter weather storms that we have to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, potentially some snowy systems coming in with Tuesday, possibly Thursday, and then maybe next weekend as well. So we'll keep an eye on all of them. We'll give you updates as we get closer to them. Too hard to say how much snow we're talking about. It's too early. So if you see anyone posting a snowfall, anything on a snowfall map on social media, take it with a giant grain of salt, and I encourage people to not post those because it is far too soon to be talking about snowfall amounts because they'll likely change. I would say we probably won't be talking about snowfall amounts until Saturday, Sunday.
You don't want to mislead people into that.
And it can change so drastically. So we'll see. We'll see how this ends up shaping up. But I would say by the weekend, if this is still looking the way it is, that's when you need to start preparing for this in a little bit more of a meaningful way, making sure the snow blowers and things like that are ready to go if the system continues to pan out how it looks like it will.
Yeah, maybe this is a good time to get prepared. You can watch the winter survival guide put together by our meteorologist talking about, if you get stuck, keep a shovel in your car, hats, gloves, blankets, even kitty litter. So if your car gets stuck in some of those black patches of ice, you can put that kitty litter down, get the friction, you're able to get back on the road.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Anything else you want to add on the winter survival guide?
No, it's very useful. It ran originally back in November, I believe.
I know, it feels like forever ago when it ran.
So, but it's on our website. You can find it on our website at WILX.com. Lots of great, useful tips in there. And of course, we'll keep you updated on air, online, wherever you can get WILX. We'll be there with updates.
Yes, so make sure to go check it out. First Alert Weather app, completely free off of Google Play and the Apple App Store. Thank you, Colton. I do want to give a quick look outside of downtown Jackson right now so you can see all of the weather that Colton was talking about, getting the slight peaks of sun here and there.
Yeah,
but Jackson, not really. There's that
we'll see how much more.
tiny bit of blue
I suspect
in the
we'll
background.
get a little bit more here before the day's
Right. And then one more look over Delta Township. Looks like traffic's moving pretty smoothly. You get more of that blue sky back there. So looking pretty good outside. All right. Well, thank you, Colton. We will see you coming up during Studio 10 at 3 o'clock today, followed by First at 4. Right now, I'm going to show you what's coming up during Mid-Michigan Matters and also our 90 minutes of news today. So we are on day 4 of the new year, if you can believe it. It is Thursday. I know a lot of people losing track of the days. But if you had some set New Year's resolutions, if one of those was cutting back on your drinking and your alcohol intake, we are talking about dry or damp January today with a chef from Michigan State University, Adam Roy. So he has done different studies into dry January. And so he's going to come into Mid-Michigan Matters today to inform you more on what dry or damp January is all about. But really, that goal is limiting your alcohol intake and improving your mental and physical health. So join us for First at 4, and we'll have Adam come and join us on Mid-Michigan Matters, and we'll also help you get more into your New Year's resolution. Then coming up, News 10 at 5 today, we're sharing the car and truck of the year, which were announced earlier today. And then coming up, News 10 at 5:30 this month, our You're Not Alone mental health series focuses on addiction. So tonight, Ann Emmerich has a story where she'll bring you the story of a man who excelled in every aspect of his life until addiction brought him down, and it brought him down hard. So he had a woman who helped him get back on the right path of life, and you're just going to have to hear his mental health story with Ann Emmerich coming up tonight on News 10 at 5:30. And then News 10 at 6 will share why flags are at half staff today. Happening at the state capitol, Governor Gretchen Whitmer did ask to lower them to half staff. We'll share when those will return to full staff, and also, again, why the flags were lowered. So that's all on what's coming up today during our 90 minutes of news, and also First at 4. But right now, I have Riley Connell standing right next to me for an update into what you have coming up. Oh, there we go. What you have coming up today during our 90 minutes of news.
Well, hello, Taylor. It's a busy day for everybody here in the newsroom. If you were tuning into our 90 minutes of news yesterday, then you know there was a hoax threat against the state capitol yesterday, and that was a bomb threat in the form of an email. So News 10's Justin Kent gave us a breakdown and some reaction to that yesterday. Today, we're continuing our coverage on that, talking a little bit about these, they call them swatting calls. So this kind of prevalence of swatting, if you remember almost a year ago, actually, some schools in mid-Michigan were victims of swatting calls.
Yeah, a few to a handful of them, yeah.
Okemos, Jackson, a few other schools, and other schools in the U.S. as well. So this was quite widespread.
Yeah. Well, even yesterday with the threat at the Capitol, it wasn't just here locally in Michigan. It was in 8 different states as well.
Yeah, widespread once again. And these threats kind of start on the internet. I've just broken all this down with a couple of experts who you will hear from coming up on News 10 at 5. But an expert out of Cooley Law School and another expert out of MSU, both in national security, former Michigan State Police. So 2 gentlemen who are really well experienced in this. And some of them even collecting data on the prevalence of what they're calling, an online form of terrorism rather than these acts of terrorism that we may be used to seeing. So this is really a new door that's open for criminals to commit acts like this. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that process looks like to catch people who commit these kinds of crimes, the likelihood of catching these folks. They're able to hide their identity online. If you remember the school swatting incidents, those were kind of started with Google calls. So that was something that started online as well. So really a scary situation to be in. Anytime you hear a potential threat, people are scared. Police swatting a building or entering a building thinking there's a threat. It can be a very traumatizing situation. So we're going to talk about how those people are caught and a little bit about this kind of change in the criminal world with the internet at their disposal. So a very interesting angle on this terrible thing that happened yesterday. And it's back to business as usual at the Capitol as well. I should add that in too. I was there earlier to grab some footage, and everybody is okay. And people are feeling relatively calm. They had a couple of school tours going on, so it really is, back to business as usual. But yesterday there was an evacuation, and it seemed to have happened quite smoothly as well. So hopefully, assuredly, nobody was hurt. So
is there any talks about increasing safety measures?
I believe there are some talks of increasing safety measures across the board, but mostly increasing awareness that these issues can happen. And also, one expert I spoke with hoping for an increase in the consequences as well. They're already pretty heavy consequences, but there's a lot of talk of changing, some of these ways that we crack down on these crimes, maybe increasing, potential years in prison, depending on where the calls happen. It is a federal crime if it's, spread across the U.S. in that way. But I think that level of awareness, maybe changing the way that some of these things are monitored online as well, maybe keeping a closer eye on some of these dangerous things like online forums. There can be really dangerous ideologies spread. But both experts I spoke with say something like this could really start to increase, especially as we get closer to a presidential election. They say sometimes the political tension can really be a driving force behind things like this. So it's definitely the time to stay vigilant. But they have assured me, and through my story, I will assure all of you, there are many task forces and many experts who are paying close attention to stuff like this and finding new ways to hopefully track these types of criminals down. So very interesting story. I mean, this is something that's really new and something that we've reported on at this station several times over now. So to learn a little bit more about the process and the resources that go into it is very interesting. So I hope y'all find it just as interesting. And
well, I mean, you just shared so much information, Riley, and so good luck putting that into a shorter time frame.
Into a minute and a half, everybody.
Yep, good luck with
somehow
that.
we will do it. I guess an important thing to mention, too, is that this specific case with the Capitol is in the hands of the FBI out of the Detroit office. So Federal Bureau of Investigations is handling it now. And we did get a statement from them on what their state of investigation looks like. So there are some people digging into it. So.
All right. Well, News 10 at 5, and catch Riley Connell more on this story, and also just going into more. I know she shared so much right now, but I'm sure you have a lot more to share coming up. News 10 at 5.
That's just the tip of the iceberg, it seems like.
Yikes. All right. Well, let that soak in. We'll check in with you, News 10 at 5. Thank you, Riley.
Thank you.
And Riley did mention mental health. And so right now I do want to bring up our You're Not Alone mental health series. If you are going through a hard time, maybe you know someone or even yourself, you were at the state capitol yesterday when it had to be evacuated because of the bomb threat hoax. And so if you're going through a rough time, if you didn't even go through that situation, but just in your day-to-day, maybe the New Year's getting off to a rough start for you, or maybe the holidays were just too much, go scan that QR code on your screen with your cell phone camera, and it will pull up a list of resources from around mid-Michigan, whether that's in Ionia, Clinton, Ingham, Jackson, Shiawassee, Lenawee County, any of those. We have a handful of resources to help guide you toward more resources if, those aren't best fitted for you. And you can go on there, scan that QR code, and get connected to someone who can help you improve your emotional well-being. I also want to make note that if you call or text the number 988, that number is 988, you can call or text it, and if you're a veteran and you press option number 1, that will connect you to another veteran who's gone through a similar experience as you, and you're able to really talk to someone who is able to better understand where you're coming from and hopefully better improve your emotional well-being. So the You're Not Alone mental health series, make sure to stay alert to that, and also knowing that tonight Ann Emmerich is having a story run with talking about a man who had his own law firm and then ended up living under the Lansing Bridge, one of the Lansing bridges in the area. And so going from an addict to advocate, that is what the story is all about tonight, coming up during our 90 Minutes of News with Ann Emmerich. So make sure you tune into our 90 Minutes of News to learn more about this man who was able to turn his life around after going through a hardship. I do also want to share what our reporters have coming up during our 90 Minutes of News. You just heard Riley Connell sharing what she has coming up, News 10 at 5. And so I'm going to start it with Erin Bowling, who is coming up News 10 at 5:30. Hi, Erin.
Thanks, Taylor. Today I'm headed to Sparrow because the next time you go to get your blood drawn, it might look a little different. The FDA has recently approved a new blood test, and all it entails is a finger prick. I'll have more on this new science on News 10 at 5:30. Back to you, Taylor.
All right, so new developments happening at Sparrow. Erin will have more, News 10 at 5:30. Again, all it takes is a finger prick. So there you go. Thank you, Erin. And then we are going to turn it, if it'll work with me. Oh, there we go, with Amaya Kuznicki.
Taylor, today, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel announced charges against a 22-year-old out of Grand Haven. He was in connection with identity theft with the Myers and Perks loyalty program. I'll have more on that story coming up in our 90 minutes of news. But for now, over to you.
All right, thank you, Amaya. Again, Amaya will have more coming up, News 10 at 6. And if you have M-Perks, that is the loyalty program with Meyer. And so just knowing there's some identity charges. But Attorney General Dana Nessel is dealing with those charges, and Amaya Kuznicki will have more coming up at News 10 at 6. I do want to give one more look outside because we are finally starting to see a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of those blue skies outside. But again, this is all ahead of a larger system moving into the area across mid-Michigan this weekend, and more so focusing on Tuesday. Very large system. Again, Colton was mentioning at the beginning of this that there are 3 different models showing various tracks. So make sure you're tuning in both on air and online here at News 10. We will give you the latest First Alert forecast updates. And of course, you can always download the First Alert weather app for more of those updates as well. But this is a live look outside downtown Jackson right now. Everything's looking quiet. It's looking dry. But again, make sure you download the First Alert weather app and tune in online and on air because large system moving in. We want to make sure that you're all prepared, all alerted to the storm moving in, whether that brings snow, whether that brings rain. We want you to be prepared and safe outside and if you're on the roads. So that is what we have coming up today, and you can look forward to all of that. And Studio 10 is going to be on in less than half an hour. So, of course, if you want to tune in with them, if you're unable to watch Studio 10 at 3 o'clock today, you can look at their social media at WILX Studio 10. I always like to go to their YouTube page. Because, you know, First at 4 is right after Studio 10, so I'm getting ready for the 4. I like to go back and watch some of the segments they've had. I know that Nicole yesterday, while we were on the News 10 Plus desk, was talking about showcasing different hobbies you can get into for the new year. So if your New Year's resolution is to get into some new hobbies, maybe it's knitting. They actually brought someone on yesterday into Studio 10 to teach you what you need to know about knitting. And they had some other little fun going on over there, too. So make sure to check out Studio 10 if you are checking that out on their YouTube page, on their social media. But of course, you can see them live coming up at 3 o'clock during weekdays, Monday through Friday. And again, they are coming up in less than half an hour. So have a great rest of your Thursday, everyone. Studio 10 is coming up soon. Bye.